Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Modern Market, where every day we discuss all things to do with the markets. That's the crypto market, the NFT market, the metals market, the stock market, and we'll be talking about how to ideally make some or a lot of money on the internet. I think we're past losing it now. Market's moving a little bit back up, at least in some markets. So we'll get into that today. We've got Bitcoin recovering to 78K. We've got gold bouncing 5% back to 4.9. That's nice to see. Hype surged $37 on the HIP4 news. The outcome markets are coming to HyperLiquid, allowing prediction markets and options. So excited to learn about that. And finally, Elon Musk SpaceX acquires XAI, now valued at around $1.25 trillion. We'll share a few of those details there. We are, of course, now space experts too. So we'll talk about it a little bit later on the show. At a minimum, get you some of the core information that you need so that you can make your decisions. We've also got the latest on price action and general market thoughts as always. So stay tuned for that. But just a reminder, friends, before we get there, nothing that we say here is financial advice. The market is very, very risky. We do not know anything for sure. So please proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment. With that out of the way, it is Tuesday. It's the 3rd of February. Today we're going to Rahim first. How are things going, man?
GM, everybody. Things are good. Things have definitely been wonky, but we made some good trades here and there. Market's still looking like weirdly shaky. It is funny when people around me, I actually had like a friend of mine reach out to me and being like, oh, should we buy the mold coin? And this is like a friend of mine who's like into fintech, like forget like the fact that he's like not into altcoins, but just the fact like, you have like normies just like seeing all of this like traction happen. It is kind of like a weird wonky time because you're obviously seeing majors being like very weird. We are definitely seeing like a bounce today. Obviously, we talk about the HyperLiquid thing in a bit, but all in all, we're taking it one day at a time. Not bad, not good. Sometimes it's okay to be in the moment.
It is indeed. It is indeed. On the more speculative side, what did you say to your friend when they asked about the Malt book or whichever more of the speculative tokens they were inquiring about? What was your guiding words?
It is not tied to the product and the founder. Remember, it's a meme coin, and his reaction was, "Oh, question mark," and that's it. So I feel like you still have to explain that nuance. I just think it's interesting because there's an appetite, because his question essentially was that there is an AI boom happening. How do I capitalize on
Sure,
that?
sure,
If you
sure.
think about it in like a retrospect. However, when I told him that, oh, it's not tied to the product, he was like, oh. So it's interesting to see that, like, it goes in line very much something that Ledge has been talking about, you guys have been talking about. This AI robotics is like the trade to focus on, and clearly, like, people have the eye and the appetite for that side of things.
Interesting. Yeah, I think there's definitely appetite for it, but you can try to express it in the wrong way, right? And I guess that's the fear or concern. And we have tried to do this already at the start of last year when all of these AI meme tokens were kind of running. Everyone thought they were investing in the future of the agentic economy, and that crashed down very, very significantly, of course, because nothing was tied to anything, and it was just a different version of meme coins. So wise words, I would say. Legendary, what is going on your side? How are you doing? Any view on what Rahim was just saying, or you want to take it in a different direction?
GM doing quite well. Nothing too specific to add on the market side of things. However, I'm starting to think more, if so many prominent people on the timeline are pivoting to all sorts of vibe coded stuff, if that will unlock some sort of vibe coding token meta, if we'll see something similar to what Meta Alchemist is trying with his vibe ship product, where I think originally also the idea was if you use the MCP tools with Cloud Code, that you'll get an airdrop for using that. So if we'll see some sort of airdrop farming season pivoting to vibe coding, so vibe code with someone's whatever tool they're building and farm an airdrop by doing that. And if that were to be the case, I wonder how that can even work as I'm speaking about it and thinking about it, because then everyone could bot that so easily and just burn through API credits to farm whatever tool usage you would farm with that. So I feel like there is a couple of founders who are trying to bring together and marry those ideas of like vibe coding and tokenomics. And I see the appeal, but it's probably the easiest it would ever be to bot that. So I'm curious to see what solutions we'll come up with.
Interesting. Yeah, I think there's clearly a lot of interest in the vibe coding side of things right now as well, right? And I know that's been around for multi-months. Like a lot of our friends who are a bit more technical have been doing that stuff for a bit longer. But the fact that I think it's onboarding a few more people now, you've got a bit more of a bigger majority who are able to participate in some way. So I can see how that is interesting to people. Look, we've got an interesting show today. We've got a bunch of important headlines, and as I just tweeted out, we're looking forward to have Moritz on the show with us towards the end of the show. He is one of the best young traders that I know. He's been one of the most right traders. You don't need to worry about opinions; just need to be right at the end of the day. And he was very famously in the silver trade very, very early. So we'll get to have a proper conversation with him in a little bit. Looking forward to that. Stay tuned. But before that, we've got the usual show. So let's get you up to speed with everything that you need to know. Starting with the price action, as always, we've got Bitcoin flat at around 77K, just a touch under 78. We've got ETH flat at around 2.2. Got BNB flat around 767. Sol is flat at just over 100 at 103. And as it was the case yesterday, HyperLiquid is the strong coin, up 16% on the day to $36, up 32% on the week, when every other token is, any of these major tokens at least, are red on the week too. Getting into the meme coin side of things, we've got Doge up 1%, Pepe's flat, Trump's flat, Bonk is up 1%, Pengu is flat, SPX is up 1%. Not a huge amount of activity on this meme coin side of things. However, big one to point out is that Burb, the Moonbirds token, is up 50%, up to around a 340 mil FDV. That is after the Upbit listing, that of course being the prominent Korean exchange. So that is good for the Burbs. Getting into the headlines themselves that we're going to talk about today and the rest of the roundup, we've got Bitcoin recovering to around 78K. Gold bounced back 5%. So Legendary will take us through what we need to know there around the major assets. Hype has surged to around $37 on the HIP4 news that outcome markets are coming to HyperLiquid, allowing prediction markets and options. So Rahim's got a few segments to just explain what those two things are and maybe some of the potential of what that will be. And finally, Elon Musk's SpaceX acquires XAI, now valued at around $1.25 trillion. I'm not a space expert, but I will bring to you some of the interesting parts of how that deal has moved along for some of the investors and what that might mean for this year's liquidity and investing in the market. Well, my thoughts on that anyway. We have, in other news, prominent collector Adam Weitzman purchased the 3AC Pudgy Penguin collection. This is prominent founder of Moonbirds, sorry, not the founder of Moonbirds, the CEO of Moonbirds and Orange Cap Gains. Spencer bought these from Sotheby's as part of the liquidation event when 3AC got liquidated, and now has passed those on to very prominent collector Adam Weitzman. Michael Saylor's strategy announced another Bitcoin buy of 855 Bitcoin for $75 million at an average price, unfortunately, of 87K. He always seems to be buying above the spot price. Lighter announces lighter EVM, seeming to be following in the path of HyperLiquid, although I'd love to have a conversation with them to determine whether they've got some original stuff as well, or whether it's simply going to be following in the path of HyperLiquid at all times. Aave DAO is in conflict with Aave Labs again regarding Mega ETH deployment. The DAO says they'll not assist with further BD. That's an interesting conflict to continue to monitor, given the bigger conversation that the bigger conflict they've been having with each other for a while. And then, as I said, finally, Moonbird's token has surged 50% to 350 mil FDV on the news that they've got the Upbit listing. So I would say quieter around the space, but some very important headlines. So that's what you need to know in the last 24 hours. Ledge, what's catching your attention? What do you want to talk about before we get into the main stuff today?
Definitely the lighter EVM as well as the Aave DAO stuff. For the lighter EVM, my question would be to the both of you. What's basically the temperature check in the room right now? Are we generally interested in exploring new EVMs that we probably don't have the strongest ties to? I mean, the exception here from the show perspective would obviously be Mega ETH once mainnet is live, because we've had so much history with that. But apart from that, is lighter EVM something that's interesting to either of you?
I mean, I don't even use lighter. So I use HyperLiquid and I use Ostium, and I am open to using some at different times. Like if I think something's cool that comes up, I'll give it a go. But if I'm not using lighter, then I'm probably not going to use lighter EVM. That'd be my very, very short answer. Rahim, what's your position?
Yeah, I think like for me, in some ways, I remember like pulling, and we discussed this on the show together many months ago, how we ended up like pulling out a lot of stuff from Hyper EVM at some point. Super bullish on Hyper Core. I don't think even back then I had like the same levels for like Hyper EVM. For me, it's like the same scenario. So I'm like not like crazy bullish, especially because I feel like a lot of people had missed the lighter farming trade, and lighter ended up like doing it like really well. I feel like there might be like some copium for people to like explore like EVM, and if I want to like do that trade and stuff. I traded like a bit on lighter, but I think I'm in the same boat. I doubt I'll be looking into it.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Ledge, do you have a view?
Yeah, not a ton of curiosity right now to hop around new EVMs and explore them, to be honest. So agree with that. And then the Avatar stuff is the one that is concerning me a bit more, because I feel like it's becoming a bit like it's starting to expose, let's put it like that, the fracture that we see more and more with labs and this labs and DAO structure. It's not the first time we covered the news, not only for Aave specifically, but for other projects as well. And I wonder if now the sentiment in crypto is one that is at the moment a more negative one, if this will foster more of these conflicts around the DAOs, and if that will just add to the bad sentiment that we're seeing right now, and maybe start to even increase the fear and greed index, to increase that anxiety more, if we then also see more established projects apparently not being aligned with what they want to do or where they want to move, because they have these internal conflicts.
Okay, I think that's fair. Rahim, what's catching your attention, if anything, before we get into the main stuff today?
I think the Upbit thing is like so interesting to see. We've talked about this on like the show back then, that I think like there's a nuance of exchanges. Like we see this on like Twitter. Clearly, a lot of people in the West hate centralized exchanges. There was a time it used to be like super bullish when like Binance were listed, whatever. Like we don't see like the same sort of like market pump, because a lot of people in the West who are predominantly on like crypto Twitter or different platforms have started like using Hyperliquid and all of these ecosystems. The nuance that people miss about like South Korea, that about 90% of their volume back in 2021 was actually like crypto volume from all over South Korea was actually on Upbit, and they still hold about like 70% of like the overall crypto volume that goes through that exchange. There is a conversation to be had that people don't hate centralized exchanges in South Korea as much as they do in like West or like different parts of the world. If you've met me like in real life, I often say this. I feel like our space looks at decentralization and centralization in a very binary way. Having grown up in like Dubai, I don't have so much uh, off optics towards like centralization, because I think like a lot of times it has its like pros, and I feel like it's such a good example. Like a lot of people don't talk about Upbit, but the parent company which owns Upbit is this company called Dynamo. They are basically like a combination of like Google and like PayPal together. So it's a big infrastructure, and a lot of people have faith in it. So interesting to kind of observe it from that point of view.
Interesting. I definitely take your point on the centralization. I think that is something which people are aggressively and overtly concerned about on in the Western side. One way that that's materializing a lot right now in Europe, for example, is around the conversation to do with digital IDs, which if you were to go to anyone in the rest of the world, I am learning, for example, in the Middle East or in China, digital ID. Okay, what's the big deal? Just chill out, guys. Like, you want to be safe, you want to be whatever. And look, I know what the bear case is for them and how they might be abused at some point in time, and they might be a form or a mode of abuse in the present and in the future. I get that, but for example, it's such a lightning rod topic for people, at least some people in Europe and probably in America too, where you just can't do that. It's an infringement of rights, and it just shows. I think, not to say one's right, one's wrong, as you said, Raheem. There are benefits to some, and there are clear benefits, and there are clear negatives. But it shows that the world looks at that very differently. And yeah, well, the one thing I've noticed, to bring it back to price, is every Upbit listing, things absolutely moon. I wonder if Upbit is more important than any other listing right now, to be honest. No other listing has this effect. So I don't know. That's maybe something to think about. One thing I wanted to bring up before we get into the main stuff, this is kind of, it's not off topic, but it's kind of going in a different direction. This was a really interesting, this is one of the articles in my section by the write-up by Akash Gupta. This is the China's Genius program. We just spoke about the Middle East, spoke about China, how people are doing things differently. I saw this article shared about how the Chinese are going about providing for their most talented children, and what they outlines. This was actually published in the FT. So this is a little summary. It said every year, 100,000 teenagers get selected into a nationwide network of experiment classes that coach them for international competitions in maths, physics, chemistry, biology, and computer science. It said the founders of TikTok's parent company, ByteDance, came through the system. So did the leaders of a couple of their two biggest e-commerce platforms. And the brothers behind China's leading AI chip rivals to NVIDIA were also in these classes. So I think it's just very interesting to see how different people around the world are prioritizing education in this way. And I think the reason why I found it interesting is because the AI conversation that we have so often now is so often described as this kind of war in AI, like trying to get towards super intelligence fastest. And obviously that requires a lot of smart people too. And I think for a long time, people have looked towards the East and thought that, to put it mildly, I think people looked towards the East and looked down on it, thought that they were only capable of copying. Obviously, there's a long history of, kind of taking Western products and then copying them and doing those sorts of things. However, I think what's simultaneously happened in the West from an educational side, and I know this from the time when I was a teacher, is that there's very little being done to stretch the people who are best. I think there's a lot more of an egalitarian movement in the West, where from an educational perspective, you're trying to make sure that everyone gets okay, tries to lift everyone up with the best people. There's not a lot being done to stretch the best, from what I could tell. And I think this is an example, something worth double clicking on and reading on if you're further interested, of how China is really accelerating the best people and doing so at a young age. Like, these 100,000 kids are getting taken at 15 and being said, like, look, guys, you're the best. Let's make sure that you continue to be the best. We're going to help you. We're going to throw resources at you. We're going to make sure that you are stretched and continue to go further. So I just thought that was very interesting. Does anyone have a thought on that? Any further reflections? Because I think it is part of this broader conversation we're having between the two kind of superpowers and how they're going to continue to progress.
I do. I have quite a strong take on that, because it reminds me of an analogy that has stuck with me for my entire life. When I was still in school, we had a very renowned professor, Austrian professor, visiting from the Vienna University, and he was basically talking about something that he called the trap of being mediocre, and this is what our school system, at least in Austria, is optimizing for. And he gave this example: if you're like good at German, good at English, but bad at math, they will do everything to basically level you up, make you average at math, but kind of ignore that you have talents in other areas, and they will not really foster them and not be like, okay, ignore that he's not the best at math, but let's try to foster their talent for languages and focus on that instead. And what happens, and that is the analogy that the professor gave, is if you have like a room and whatever challenge is, so basically you have a room and all the kids are being trained to the same average, to the same like mediocre status. Everyone's standing in the middle of the room. And then you throw a ball randomly in that room and nobody's going to catch it because everyone's stuck in the middle. And you don't have people who are like in one corner of the room where like all the math experts are, the language experts are like placed somewhere else. And basically the ball is whatever challenges come up throughout in life, whatever challenges society will face, you will need people with different talents. But because our school system is training everyone to be like average in everything that they do and kind of ignore the talents, but help them catch up in the weak spots, we will lack having experts who will be able to be in one corner of the room and solve a very, very specific problem. So that is something that stuck with me and that I've like basically observed throughout my entire experience going through school in Austria, through university back home in Austria as well as in the States. So this is why I very, very much like the approach that you have mentioned there. We're like, okay, you identify gifted people, you put them in whatever sort of program, and you just try to make them better at what they already are excelling and like foster these individual skills and talents.
I remember in the UK, and this is final take before we got to get into the market stuff today. In the UK, there was even just a humongous conversation about what to call these people. And this is the way that people just waste time because they're too busy around the politics of it all. I was actually head of the name that they stuck on for a while, although I'm sure they've changed it because they always keep changing these things as the winds of politics change, was gifted and talented. Like the gifted and talented kids. But then the thing is, it would be too mean on the other kids to have too many gifted and talented kids. Sorry, it'd be too mean if there was only a few. So it can't just be gifted. So then it's got to be like gifted and talented. So then to include some of the people who are not gifted on the intellectual side and maybe they're talented in a different way, to include more people. It's like, guys, we're losing the meaning of the word again. Like we're losing, like you can't, it's not for everyone. That's the whole point. It's not for everyone. And I think that's maybe one of the core things, even with the university, actually, the whole university ecosystem, is that I think something's gone wrong there. It was never supposed to be for everyone to go and get whatever degree that you feel like, and therefore, it's not going to be highly contributory to the world necessarily. So look, that's kind of a tangent, but I think is relevant to the whole, the various things we're experiencing in the world at the moment. But let's get into the market stuff, because we do have Moritz joining us, one of the best young traders I know, in about 15, 20 minutes. Looking forward to that conversation. So let's get to the market stuff before we get to that. Ledge, assets are kind of up, at least some of them, but still volatile. What do we need to know?
Yeah, it was a very, very interesting day in the market because so many things have happened. Maybe let's start with the gold side of things first. Gold is up almost 6% back to 4.9K on the day. Silver is up 12% on the day. Has basically gone back to $86.50. Went as low as mid 70s just a couple days before. So that's a solid V-shaped recovery, I would say, on the week. Obviously, we're still down from, or at least in the month, we're still down from all-time highs, but we are coming back on that side of things. The stock market also had a very, very interesting day because we've seen some Q4 results coming through. We have companies like Apple being up 4%, Amazon, Alphabet being up almost 2%. The big winner on the stock market side of things, however, let me get that up on screen as well, is Palantir Technologies. Palantir is up in the pre-market. It's up 11% because they reported very, very strong results. So currently at $147, pre-market already trades it at $164. That is also talking about pre-markets, the outlook for today. Nasdaq is looking good. It's up another 40 bips in the pre-market. S&P is up 20 bips. Dow is basically flat. However, the fear and greed indicator did shift from greedy to being neutral. So we are a couple ticks down on that. And finally, what I also found very interesting, trying to make sense of everything that's going on in the market right now, is that we have seen some ETF price on the Bitcoin side come through yesterday, and to quite a significant extent, actually. Because last week we said it was a very, very weak one with outflows on Friday to the tune of 500 mil, outflows on Thursday as high as 817 mil. But yesterday, the week and also the first trading day in February for the Bitcoin ETFs was a very good one with 560 mil in inflows. So a bit of a recovery on the inflow side, bit of recovery on the crypto side. Stocks look fairly decent as well. But to me, the most surprising thing is how volatile gold and silver started to behave as assets, where we now can see gold lose $1,000 over a couple days, recover 6% in a day, silver even doing double digits, silver being up 12% on the day. So that is something that is, in my opinion, unheard of. And I'm not trading at the moment. I've been thinking, do I want to add this to an LP and farm fees on there? But honestly, it's too volatile for me at the moment. And both of these assets I still like in the midterm. So I'd rather hold them through the volatility instead of trying to be extra smart and farm some fees where I would probably still get hurt by impermanent loss while doing that.
Yeah, I'm of the same opinion there. I've said that I think gold is going to be fine. You say that it can lose this much and it's super volatile. I think it had to be for a little bit, right? It just went, if you look at the chart where it was, it just went vertical at some point in time. Like that move from around 4.7 to 5.5 on gold was just way too vertical. And silver's move as well towards the back end, if you look at the chart, it's just insane. So I personally, I can't speak for the other metals necessarily, although maybe Moritz can when he comes on the show later today. I think gold had to do that, and I think gold is going to continue higher. That's my view. I sold a touch to like rebalance my portfolio over the weekend because I had accumulated a lot, but I think the rest I'm kind of going to sit in because do you know what I think is going on? And I'm curious to hear Rahim's thoughts on this as well. I think the market decided, and on this US, on the dollar bounce, I think the market thought or has decided that Warsh as Trump's Fed pick is going to be, it's like, oh my God, he's way too responsible. He is kind of hawkish. These are all the things that he said in the past. You start digging up previous videos of him talking and all of these views that he used to have. And so people have got a little bit bearish on assets, right? Like people start to think, oh, hang on, is he not going to pump the markets? Is he not going to be as loose as what Trump would want him to be? Is he not going to cut rates? I think that's what people started to think. And that's kind of, maybe, in my opinion, what triggered this this correction, which, by the way, had to happen. I think the correction had to happen in any event. It was just looking for a reason to do it, to be clear. Like whether that happened or not, it would have had to happen. But it was looking for a reason. I think that was the reason. I think it's a weak reason because I don't think when he actually sits in the chair, he's going to be able to have, he's going to continue to hold those views. And by the way, Stats made a really, really good point when he was on the show the other day, which we should all be aware of anyway, that it's only one person, it's one vote. You know, they all have to vote on it and it would be one extra vote, but there's still a bunch of other people in there in decision making. So it's not like just because he thinks we've got to be more hawkish, then therefore we absolutely must. So I think that's important to know. Rahim, coming to you for your thoughts first here, and then maybe we circle back to Legendary as well. I think we can stop sharing screen as well now, Max, if we can.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty much like aligned with everything that you said. I feel like people have like obviously been like over leveraged with like, especially with like the volatility in like this entire like political cycle, if we can call it that, has been like absolutely like horrendous. And I think obviously with the Fletcher announcement, I think it kind of got the markets wonky. Of course, seeing like 30-40% like dips on like gold and silver is definitely like brutal to see, but it's like there is no reason for anyone to believe, or there's like no indicator that says that, oh, people are gonna like start parking money on like Bitcoin or like all like these like alts and stuff, if there was a conversation, and I've seen some of these conversations, that okay, of course capital always rotates, like where is it gonna rotate next? I just don't think like that's like very clear on like a broader political and a socioeconomic like scale. And I think until that happens, if you still believe that there's going to be volatility with the with the presidency, which I think is going to be like that for the next like 2-3 years, I just like don't see why wouldn't like gold go back up, and like it would be like the better trade to look at.
Okay. So kind of a line there, I think. Ledge, did you have a view on what we just discussed there with respect to gold and maybe even Warsh and the Fed?
Yeah, maybe more in the worst side of thing, because I do agree with stats. It's only one vote, but this thing that concerns me with it is how anxious the market is with all kind of news like that, and how strongly it does react to that. And it's making me question: is that partially because the market is so close at all-time high, or is essentially still trading mostly at all-time highs, and is then more worried to look for reasons to sell instead of being more greedy and just trying to add more? Or is this more of a reflection that basically that everything that Trump does is viewed with a ton of potential implied volatility, and this is why every new appointment, every new news that we see coming out of the office is being traded more than I would expect it to be traded, and all these reactions feel a bit overblown? Maybe it's a mix of both.
Maybe. Okay, interesting thoughts. We've got to get to the next couple of headlines because they are important, I think, especially this one. Rahim, coming to you here on this big HIP-4 HyperLiquid news. What do we need to know about this, and why do you think it's important?
Essentially, yesterday, our Lord and Savior, our ray of hope, Jeff, essentially dropped like a Discord announcement announcing HIP4, which is essentially focused on outcomes as like fully collateralized contracts focused on prediction markets and like option like instruments. He spoke about like one of the directions that they are taking with HIP4 is to not focus on like leverage ecosystems. I feel like in some ways people still see hyperliquid as like a go-to place for people like leveraging. So I feel like if you read the announcement, it does feel like there's like a PR element to it as well, that okay, you know, we've been known for like leverage trading and like this entire like cycle or whatsoever, but just to let you know, this outcomes trading that we are looking into is not around that. And the two verticals he spoke about was prediction markets and bonded option like instruments. To clarify the difference between the two, we all understand prediction markets. However, like prediction markets are a lot more binary, whereas with like bonded option like instruments that the announcement is talking about is that you can have a resolution within the range and win accordingly. So, for example, if you were doing a polymarket bet, which is like a binary bet, is Bitcoin going above 100K or below 100K? It's a binary option. You can obviously sell those shares between up and down, but the result is like a binary one. Whereas when you have like these bonded instruments, you will essentially have a market that says, oh, is Bitcoin going to trade between 95K or 100K? And based on whatever like point that you end up taking, the outcome will be that, oh, if you were closer to like 95, you would end up winning less. If you were in the center, you would end up winning more. So it's less gambly maybe we can say that, because I feel like there's like less risk involved. And yeah, that's essentially a massive focus. Obviously, the market absolutely loved it. We saw hype almost 20% in the last day, hitting I think around like $37.5. I think it's super bullish. I definitely think hyperliquid is it's finding itself in like a very similar position, in my view, in a very weird way, of where Tether is. What I think their biggest value proposition is like the fact that they built such a strong value of trust in the last like year or two, and the fact that they have like massive amounts of like liquidity. Because the biggest issues that you have in our industry is especially when it comes to like prediction markets and things like that, is the liquidity factor. Which is why when it comes to like a lot of like trading of like stocks or like prediction markets or all of this, people have started aggregating. We see phantom aggregating different protocols rather than building out their own ecosystem. MetaMask is doing that. And I think for them to double down on their trust and liquidity and dive into a big narrative of the cycle, which is a binary non-leverage option, which is prediction markets and these options, I think is a fantastic direction for them to take as the house of finance.
Love it. Super, super helpful summary, Rahim. I think you touched on all the important aspects there. So not only just replicating prediction markets, but also doing some of this non-linear stuff, which I think is interesting. Just for a bit of context, Kalshi and Polymarket's previous rounds were raised at around 10 to 12 billion, I think is my understanding. So the value purely in just the prediction market space is enormous. You have to think that at least some of the reason of this rise is because of trying to price in some of that value accruing to hype, not like directly from Polymarket or Kalshi, but like the fact that they are going to create this style of market, which is clearly very, very valuable. They've been excellent at building their own thing. So a lot of additional value that HyperLiquid can build towards now because it has this other thing. And arguably, just someone would argue that it was already undervalued because people are only just understanding the value of HIP-3. So HIP-3 is still scaling as they bring more and more assets there, as more volume gets attracted there. And now we have HIP-4 as well. Legendary, what's your view here?
I like it a lot. I like it especially because the outcomes are non-linear. And yesterday I've spoken about the fact when we had this in the snapshot that I'd be interested on how they want to settle trades and how they want to handle it, that they make it more attractive to bring more capital to that and make these markets more tradable as hedging instruments and purely more so than purely being speculative instruments. And I feel like this is exactly a very good approach to solve for that and do that. And hence I do think that HIP-4 makes a ton of sense. I like it a lot, but I also agree with your take, B, in the sense that with HIP-3, I feel like there's been a very, very strong valuation delay. Like the market's been excited about HIP-3 initially, sold off that pump, and then hype was like doing whatever it was doing, being a bit sideways, following the market. But it was only until Jeff had that post out saying that they basically managed to flip Binance's per volume and now become the most liquid order book in the crypto world, period, that we've seen that massive increase in hype in the hype price. And I feel like if you were in tune with the volumes, if you were in tune with the order books, that's something that you would have seen if you tracked the volumes. That's not coming out of nowhere. There was info that the market could have accessed, but it still took this confirmation. It still took this announcement for the market to then actually pump hype. And I feel like we will be able to maybe set up a similar trade with HIP-4. Once this thing is live and you monitor volumes and you get to a point where, this could get close to flip Kalshi or Polymarket in whatever daily volume, then I would expect a similar race in the token price again. So it might be worthwhile tracking HIP-4's implementation and volume and see if you want to trade that.
Yeah, I like it. I think that makes sense. Just in terms of price action, I feel like if you've missed this run, you probably feel a bit sick having to buy here. But I do think that I still think Bitcoin's a bit weak. And I think this was my reason for maybe exiting and chopping myself up a little bit on this trade. I hold some hype from a little bit lower than here, but not enough at all. As some people in the Telegram chat will know, I shared how I was chopping myself up over the weekend a little bit. So I'm holding some from around 32, I think, but not enough at all. But the issue for me, the thing that I'm working through in my head is how much is hype just strong and going to be strong in the future, irrespective of what Bitcoin does, or how much is it going to be affected if Bitcoin wants to go lower again? And my instinct is that Bitcoin goes lower again, and therefore hype will have to get dragged down a bit again. So now that it's shown this amount of strength, though, I think it might not go down as much at all as anyone would like in order if you've missed your entry. But I think if Bitcoin goes lower, it can't just completely ignore it. It's hard to say because it's kind of ignoring it at the moment, but it's something to keep in mind. So that's my thinking anyway, and I could be wrong on it, but that's my thought on the price action and where I think it could be going. But look, let's get to the final headline here before we have the conversation with Moritz in just a little bit. Excited to get into that interview in just a moment. But the final headline today is the news that SpaceX is acquiring xAI ahead of a possible IPO. Elon Musk told workers yesterday SpaceX is acquiring xAI. The mega deal is the latest sign that Musk is consolidating his business empire as he goes all in on AI. He said the CEO wrote that the deal would create the most ambitious, vertically integrated innovation engine on and off Earth with AI, rockets, space-based internet, direct-to-mobile device communications, and the world's foremost real-time information and free speech platform. Allegedly, now SpaceX is trading at around 1.5 trillion, or that's where it's looking to IPO next year. And interestingly, in one of these posts that we're going to share, Ledge, I think it's the last one, Alvin Hsia, the founder of Ventures, said that the SpaceX market on HyperLiquid has started pricing this in a week ago. You can see the chart kind of tracking up over the last week or more as it's now getting towards that 1.25, $1.3 trillion valuation. So that's interesting to see how those pre-IPO markets are playing out on HyperLiquid too. Just an interesting couple sets of details. So on the Kabasi letter, they shared that SpaceX just became the 12th most valuable company on Earth, valued at around 1.25 trillion. Some estimates show the company could IPO at 1.75 trillion, making it the 8th most valuable company in the world. So that's just for some context. And then finally, this interesting part about the way the investors have kind of evolved over time. This is a crazy tweet from Trung Fan that shared the life of a Twitter investor from October 2022. This really takes you through the crazy journey. In October 2022, Elon acquired Twitter for 44 billion. He then founded xAI. Twitter rebranded to X in July 2023. In May 2024, xAI raised 6 billion at 24 billion. And then in July 2024, xAI completed the Memphis supercluster. That was 100,000 GPUs. In December 2024 of the same year, xAI then raised 5 billion at a $50 billion valuation. So 6 months after its 24 bill, it just doubled its valuation later in the year. Then 3 months later, in March 25, xAI acquires X in an all-stock deal, which valued xAI at 80 billion. So now another almost 50% higher on the 50 billion and 3 times more than what they raised at in 2024. June 2025, xAI raises 5 billion at a $136 billion valuation. So again, that's now a 5x for those original xAI investors who invested at a 24 bill. And then this year, xAI raises 20 billion in January of this year at a $230 billion valuation and has then been acquired by SpaceX. It's like, what a journey, what an unreal investor journey as you just relentlessly get bid up by higher and higher valuations and demand in the private market for that stock. And then at the end of it, you get rolled into SpaceX, one of the most exciting, one of the companies that people are most excited about in the whole industry. So I thought that would just be an interesting one to share as we close off. Any final thoughts here, boys, just on SpaceX and this kind of arrangement that's taken place?
Two quick thoughts. One is the interview with Elon where he was asked what would he do if he would be reset to having zero money. He's like, he can't imagine that. Like, and even if the case, he would just ask people to give him money because he's good at making his investors money, and
it's just not even a reasonable question. Like, what would you do to stuff like that? It's not possible. Look how much money people give me every day.
It's clearly a good example of that. And what I also found hilarious is in the Kopesi letter, the second post also said that SpaceX is the biggest company in history to put a laughing emoji in the press release for 1.25 trillion merger. And it literally reads, in the long term, space AI is obviously the only way to scale. To harness even a millionth of our sun's energy would require over 1 million times more energy than our civilization currently uses. The only logical solution, therefore, is to transport these resource-intense efforts to a location with vast power and space. I mean, space is called space for a reason, lol. Which I just found hilarious to put that in the press release.
Pretty outrageous. He does what he wants, doesn't he? Rahim, final take here before we get into our interview in just a moment. What's your thought?
It's such a drastic difference if you compare all of this to like our industry. Like we are here still waiting for our projects to be waiting for better market conditions to launch their token, and you have like Elon Musk buying like Twitter for 44 billion, and today like his like this IPO is like trading at like 1.45 billion, a trillion. It's just like insane to like think about that, how much of this just like comes down to like talent and like execution, which is like literally like the fundamental law of like progress and success and building, which is something that's like non-existent. It's just like so funny how quick things move in like the broader world, whereas like our space sometimes like still lacks that.
Well, I think we've been desperate for better conditions, and part of the reason is because the better conditions have gone elsewhere. The market, if you're raising anything with AI slapped on it over the last however long, has, there's been plenty of demand, and so the better pastures have gone elsewhere. The grass has been greener on the other side, at least for a bit, so that's made it tougher in other environments. But look, that was an interesting detail to share. We'll keep sharing more of these additional details like that in future as we kind of expand the scope of the show. But look, that's the main show done for today. Rahim, thanks for joining us. As always, want to cycle into our interview for today. Really, really excited to have Moritz join us on the show today. One of the best young traders that I have known over the last few years since I got in the space in 2021. Mo is a crypto trader who turned $1,000 into a portfolio that now generates enough returns for him to live off. And he did it all while starting as a student 4 years ago. But what makes Moritz different from countless crypto stories out there is his focus on a sustainable style of wealth building, not just quick flips. He spent years navigating the crypto markets, watching people make exceptional returns and watching just as many lose it all. Now he shares what he's learned about building wealth safely in both traditional and crypto markets, combining ETF strategies with selective crypto exposure. And I think that's pretty important and will be a core part of our conversation today. So today we'll talk about Mo's journey from that $1,000 to financial independence, his approach to balancing traditional and crypto investing, and the lessons he's learned from the years of trading where he sees opportunities in today's market. So first time on the show with us, Moritz, thanks so much for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Yeah. First of all, thanks for having me. Can you guys hear me loud and clear?
Can hear you loud and clear, man.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I was like just thinking when the last time was that I was like on any show or like Twitter space. And I think it was actually like at least like 1.5 years ago, like during the Web3 gaming hype. So like very excited to be on your show today.
Very, very excited to have you. As you said, you're not easy to get hold of from a creator perspective, although I know that's something that you're embracing a little bit more now. Just a personal question before we get into the main stuff. What kind of created this big separation from putting yourself out there? I know you're writing a lot more now, but you definitely kind of went quiet for a while. Were you focused on trading entirely? Is that what you thought it took to be successful? What was the reason for this big kind of gap in putting yourself out there?
Yeah, so when I started on X, like 2021 or like 2022, in the beginning, it was really just like I was sharing like all my trades, my entries, everything like on public wallets. That's how I like got a lot of traction in the beginning. But I stopped doing that quite early on because like at some point, like people are pocket watching you. Like I don't think it's a good thing if you want to trade, if people are looking like every move you do. I think it's like better to like sometimes like differentiate like X and your trading. So and then yeah, I had a few months over the last few years where I just didn't have the passion about content anymore because combining it with trading is what I wanted to do, but I couldn't really do it like the way I wanted to. So that's why I kind of stopped posting super actively. But why I'm getting back into it now is that like I want to stay in crypto full time, and I don't want to rely on only trading. And I feel like, yeah, building like multiple sources of income is like the best thing you can do. And yeah, I kind of want to like do it like separately again. I'm not sure yet like how much I will share about like my trades again, but I definitely want to like also like get more into content again. Yeah, because I also think like if you trade, it's very important to have like peace of mind.
Yes.
And for me, not knowing that even if I don't trade for a few months, because I also don't want to trade forced trades. Like the last few months for me, like the risk reward of taking trades was like terrible. And it just feels good to know that even if you don't take trades for like a few months, that you have like something else that you can like focus on. So that's like the main reason why I want to like double down on content again this year.
Super interesting. Let's double click straight away. I've got a ton of stuff to ask you about trading in the past, in the present, what you think of the markets in the future, but let's double click on that first thing right away, which is you thought the risk reward in the last few months was not there and that it was terrible. What did you see in the markets over the last few months or however long time frame that made you think, look, I just need to be patient here. I just need to not click buttons. I need to walk away and not do anything.
Yeah, I just feel like after Trump becoming president again, all the debts that we had, Michael Saylor like buying billions of dollars every single week, like at some point it just felt like I was asking myself like, who's the marginal buyer? As simple as it sounds, but it was like everyone is like in a crypto trade right now, and it felt like at some point like the risk reward just wasn't there anymore. Yeah, and as soon as the market like kind of tops, which happened, I don't know, like 9 months ago or whatever, when the all-time high was, yeah, I prefer to like not take too many trades in a downwards trend. I think it's like very important to know like when to trade and like when not to trade. And for me, like the point after like all the TradFi money was in the market, I didn't really see the upside in the crypto market anymore.
That was a really important thing we've been talking about on the show, where we saw all of these DATs coming in, so many DATs, all of the money that might have been used to bid other things before was coming in via the DATs, right? And that was one of the things we identified as well. So that makes sense to us. Maybe zooming just a little bit further back though, what made you dive in to, so that's kind of you noticing that the lack of opportunity and that it was maybe oversaturated. Why did you get into crypto when you did? Take us back to the beginning of your journey. What did you notice then that was maybe an asymmetric opportunity, or why did you think then that it was a good thing to get into?
Yeah, to be completely honest, it was like super lucky. It was not that I like saw Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency exploding like it did. It was like during 2021, I was like still studying back then. It was COVID. It was like a lockdown in Germany. I had nothing to do. I had like too much free time. And I randomly stumbled like across a YouTube video. It was, you probably know him as well, like from Crypto Gorilla. I also like told him he's nice. Pretty much the one who got me into crypto. It was like one of his like NFT videos. And I think he was talking about like upcoming wins. I was like super bored. I just tried it out, minted one, got like lucky on the reveal, revealed like a super rare one. So I had my first W in the beginning. And yeah, I think just because of that, I just stuck around because I saw, oh, there's definitely some money to be made. And from there, like as I said, I was like still studying, still had a lot of free time. I was pretty much like spending all my free time like on X, on Discords, like back in the day, whitelist grinding, even though I was not very successful at that. But yeah, focusing on NFTs first for pretty much like the first 2 years, I would say, before I really like got into like liquid tokens and other stuff.
Gotcha. And you mentioned, you know, you've been lucky in the start. You minted something, revealed a super rare one, had like your first motivational big win. What was your first big loss when coming into crypto, coming into NFTs and trading?
Oh, it was definitely FTX. So when the whole FTX thing happened, I was like, one, super exposed to Solana, and two, I had a lot of my money, even like stable coins on FTX that I did not withdraw like in time. So that probably nuked my portfolio down from, I don't know what the exact number was, but like it was probably like a 80% drawdown like in my portfolio. And yeah, it was not nice. it was probably like one of the toughest times back then to go through. But I also got lucky because I think a few months after FTX happened, I don't know exactly what it was, but if I remember correctly, it was like the Blur airdrop that I got. So like after losing a lot of money, I made some money back a few months later. So that like motivated me again to like keep going.
And how did you deal with that drawdown in your portfolio? Like when you're down 80%, FTX crash happened. What got you basically out of this hole and kept you going? Like what helped you through that time?
Honestly, I think I did not handle it very well because at that time I wasn't really speaking to anyone in real life about what I was even doing. Like even I was living with my parents back then. I didn't even know that I was doing like anything. They thought I was like studying all day. So I didn't want to like talk to them about it, not to like any of my friends, because I just didn't want, because at that time I might like not insane amounts of money, but like for me as a student, it was like a good amount of money and I didn't want to talk to anyone else about that. I would like just kept that to myself. So like the drawdown was like really 2 months of like, I don't want to say I was like depressed, but I definitely didn't feel super well at the time. And I also like got a little bit fat during that time, didn't do any sport. So in hindsight, I should have talked to anyone about it, like for sure, but I did not do that. So like, I definitely didn't handle that very well.
Man, this so much resonates from like how I experienced 2021 as well. Maybe although I'm like maybe a little bit older and some of my experiences were different. That thing about like not doing any sport, not being able to talk to anyone because everything was so new, everything was like explosive in so many interesting ways. It was like very hard to navigate, I think, without the group of people that we now have. And now I think it's loads better. So one thing that it's interesting you said a couple of times, and I'd be very curious for how you would recommend to other people now to do the thing that you're saying that you did, but not giving yourself any credit for, which is you keep saying like, oh, you got a bit lucky, but it seems like you get a bit lucky more than once. And I think that's one of the characteristics of people who manage to stay around for a while is sure within one view, you can say, I got a bit lucky, but it seems like you got lucky in 2021, you got lucky in 2022, you got lucky in 2023. They're like, and admittedly, there's some terrible bits of luck as well, with your FTX example. But some people manage to increase their surface area of luck more than others. So how would you explain to people now, with a chance to reflect on it, how to increase your surface area of luck? Not saying you're going to guarantee a win, but what do you think that you were able to do to just keep playing, keep increasing the surface area of your luck?
So I think like for me, what helps me a lot, I think I'm like a very objective person. So I usually don't get like too emotional about like trades and stuff. So like when I make money, and we all know that during NFT days, if you own a Bored Ape for like 100 ETH, you own a Bored Ape for like 100 ETH in your head. It's not like, oh, this Bored Ape is worth like $500,000. And for me, it was always like, keep thinking about the money and like, if you actually pull the money out, how it can like impact your life. And for me, it was always like since the beginning. And obviously, because I had a lot of money on FTX and stuff, like let's ignore that part. That was definitely not the best risk management. But I think overall, I was always like super concerned about like downside risk protection. And yeah, just be honest to yourself. Like if you made a bad trade, figure out why the trade didn't went the way you thought it would, and don't blame Donald Trump for posting something, because if you are in the market that is super risky, you have to like, there's always like a chance that someone like Donald Trump comes in and like fucks up your trade. That can happen, but it's at the end of the day, always like take the responsibility and like try to improve your next trade.
Fair enough. And you've also recently written an article on X, which went absolutely viral, hit 3 million views, called How to Actually Build Wealth and Retire Early. And one of the core principles in that article is owning productive assets. Now, if you talk about productive assets, what do you mean by that exactly?
Yeah, so like in this article especially, I'm like focusing on ETFs, because I feel like that's like definitely the easiest way for at least the majority of people to make money. Obviously, you can always say like, if you're good at crypto, you can be all in crypto and trade the market. You can, if you're good at real estate, you might get like more returns on real estate. But or like even like if you're building a business, maybe use all your money and build a business. That was also one of the comments I got like against the article, that like you should focus more on making money instead of like how to invest your money. But for me, those two are like two completely like different pillars, and you can't really like narrow down how to like make money. You can't explain someone how to make money in like 5 minutes. There are like many different ways. But I feel like investment should be like taught in school. And obviously, as like you can also see by the reaction of like the article, a lot of people don't have what we might think is like common knowledge. And I feel like a lot of money in our industry, like they made a lot of money in crypto, but they like never invested any money outside of crypto. I think just recently, an example like CBB, who we all know, who like obviously he made everything right. He's like 9 figures, but I think he posted something like, oh, he has like 100 million now, and what should I buy? Like I think he even said like he never bought a single stock in his life. So for me, that was just like crazy. Like how can you like you can pretty much retire like 10 lives and you like never invested any money like outside of crypto. And yeah, for me, it was just like about like putting some more awareness out there about like, yeah, how like money, if you like take it out of crypto, can actually like impact your life.
And you did really well with the article, but I'm curious about one thing in specific, because similar to you, I also like my ETFs. I like my all country worlds, my MSCI worlds, and we'll speak more about that in a bit. But I wonder how you manage this balance, because for me, I have this TradFi background, right? So I know the stock market returns on average 8-9%, S&P 500 8-9% per year, and always my thinking always has been like you can't outperform that. Then I got into crypto and I've seen like crazy returns and obviously have outperformed that. And I also did rotate some of these profits back now into quote unquote the boring stock market and being happy with the 8-9%. But how in your head do you balance these two worlds? Like on the one hand, you have this crazy opportunities in crypto where you can 10x, 100x with a meme coin, you can outperform for a certain amount of time. And then you have like this more quote unquote boring foundation of having an MSCI world, all country world, putting your money in and just letting it work for 8-9% per year, not being focused about outperforming the market. So how do you strike that balance of living in those two worlds simultaneously?
Yeah, so what's super important for me, like in my portfolio structure, I have like a long-term investment portfolio, and then I have like a short-term like trading portfolio. And I try to really like differentiate like my trading and my investing. And for me, like my investment portfolio is like a one-way street. All the money I pull out of crypto, I put into like my ETF plan, my silver, maybe soon like a little bit of gold, and I will pretty much like never sell it. So because yeah, I just don't think it makes sense to buy like single stocks. Like it's just not worth like the effort, because at the end of the day, you will get like the same return or like probably like even less. And then I have my like trading portfolio, which is like mainly crypto. And yeah, right now my long-term portfolio is probably like 80% or like 70 or 80% of my like total like net worth. Then I have like some stables, and the rest I use for like crypto trading. And as you said, of course, especially in times of crypto, you can definitely like outperform the stock market. But for me, like that's like more like trading. And yeah, I don't really count that as like investing. For me, it's really like investing. I have I'm trying to get like my 8% annual return. And then I have like the rest of my portfolio that I can like gamble with like a little bit, take on a little bit more risk, be a little bit more active. And with that, I try to like outperform the market. That's like pretty much my portfolio model.
I like it. You mentioned the silver just a second ago. I think you might have put that in the investment bucket. So it sounds like some of your investments go 7x in like a few months' time as well. Talk us through the silver trade. Obviously now everyone's attention is on it. People are trying to buy it. My mum texted me the other day trying to buy silver. People are trading it on perps on HyperLiquid. But you were very, very early to this trade. So I would love for our audience to get just a flavor of what you saw in that, whether it's as a trade, whether it's in as an investment. Maybe you can speak to how you're viewing it at the moment. But what did you see in silver at the time that you got in, and what was your thesis?
Yeah, so there again, I once got like a little bit lucky because it was like, I think it was May last year. It was like after I sold a lot of my crypto, like I was completely out of Solana, Ethereum, and I had some stables. And at that point, I didn't have like any precious metals in my portfolio at all. And I wanted to like diversify a little bit. And I almost just bought gold, but then I was like thinking a bit, doing some research. Then like my first thought was to like maybe do like 70% gold, 30% silver. But then I was like looking at some stuff, and obviously it was like the industrial usage of silver increasing, but it was like mainly I was looking at the chart from the like of the gold to silver ratio, or like silver to gold, whichever it is. And it was like above 100, which only happened, I think, 4 or 5 times in history. And every single time it happened, it was like a very good like buy signal for silver. And usually if I like would practice what I preach, I would have just stuck to like my 70% gold and 30% silver ratio, and not try to like actively trade the precious metals. But then I was like thinking there were like too many stars aligning, so I like took the gamble and just went like all in silver on that. Because in hindsight, like I only did it with like 3 or 4% of my total portfolio, so I was like fine taking the risk. If I would have like put more of my money, like 30% of my portfolio or whatever, I would have probably stuck to my principles and just would have went like gold, silver. So yeah, it was just like some stars aligning, and the timing was lucky because I just like sold my crypto and wanted to get into it anyway to like diversify my portfolio. Yeah, that was pretty much the thought process about behind my silver buys.
Amazing. I think there's so many nuggets of wisdom in there from a trader's perspective, where there's just no simple answer, is there? Sometimes there's just no simple answer. It's like, okay, well, so this was the specific situation, this is what I thought I should have done. If I had maybe adjusted my portfolio in this way, I would have done this, but I didn't. I reduced the size and therefore I went all in. So it's like, there's a lot of conditional aspects to the way that we trade, and there's no perfect rule, I think. So it's very interesting to hear your explanations of these things, Moritz. As we kind of come to the conclusion here, we've just got a few minutes left. I'm sure people would be interested to know, I'm very interested to know, what is your outlook for the rest of the year now? So you've seen precious metals absolutely rip, but crypto itself is really struggling. Just in the last week, ETH is down 20%. Bitcoin's struggling to get back above 80. Precious metals have ripped, but they're also getting crazy volatile. Gold even just up 5% on the day today, back to around 5K, but went as low as 4.5. So how are you what's your outlook for 2026, and how would you be thinking about allocating during the course of this year?
I know I will get a lot of hate for that, but I still just can't be super bullish on crypto. Like, for me, I just added, like, before the dip, I bought some Bitcoin for the first time, like, in a super long while. Or like before that, I didn't have any Bitcoin in my portfolio at all. I think it makes sense to have some Bitcoin in your portfolio, but like very small percentage. Everything else, like, I don't know why anyone would buy Ethereum or Solana these days. Like, I just don't know why. Obviously, there are like coins like HyperLiquid, super interesting, but also that is like almost 2x up now from the lows. So I don't agree on people saying it will go to hundreds of billions. So for me, like, every time it crosses like $40 or $50, for me, the risk reward doesn't look that good anymore, but I might be wrong. Yeah, still super bullish on equities long term. Like, I don't care what it will do this year, but like, I will stay 100% invested in that. I want to keep my silver. I might add some gold, but yeah, all of that just like also like with a long-term outlook, like just specifically for like this year. I don't know, like.
So the US equities, you're happy to ride this Trump volatility. The volatility in the world is not dissuading you from the equity side?
No, I don't care. Like whatever happens. Like if it drops 30%, I will increase my portfolio allocation to 100% equities. I don't care. Like I just know like in 10 years I will be happy. The more money I deploy now, the happier I will be like in 10 years. And with crypto, I will like right now I don't really feel like the urge to buy anything, but it might change. But probably like whatever I buy, like if I buy anything, it will also be like on a shorter time horizon. Like it's not gonna be a long-term investment. Like I don't think you can buy any asset other than Bitcoin and crypto on a like time horizon of like 10 years, but not even 5 years. That's like, I think you have to be like super active. That's also like when like normies ask me like what to buy in crypto, like I usually tell them buy nothing, but if they want to buy something, like buy Bitcoin, because in my mind, like it doesn't work in my mind. Like if you're not full-time crypto or like at least like part-time crypto, like how can you buy like an altcoin? Like for me, that doesn't work because I don't know. I don't really see like a long-term future for Solana or like most of the other coins.
Two final questions for you. It's a piece of advice that you would give to traders. First question is, someone's new to trading early on their portfolio journey. What's the single best piece of advice you would give someone who is just getting started with trading?
Don't listen to everything you read on the internet. Try to like really curate where you're getting your information from. Yeah, and just don't trust anything, any P&Ls or like screenshots you see on the timeline and think, oh, I should follow this guy.
And that's, I think, also general good life advice, not only trading. Second question, what advice would be to someone who's sitting on a 7-figure plus portfolio? Which piece of advice would you have for them?
You can already think what I would say, right?
Yeah, of course.
Equity.
Yeah, just deposit like most of it into like stock market. And if you are in crypto, keep 20-30%, play around with it. If your portfolio is like big enough, buy some real estate, whatever. Or like if you want to buy a business or like build a business, invest the money into the business, I think that's also like fair. But I just like didn't really mention it in my article because I don't think like this applies to like many people. I think like in reality, like 95% of people are probably like best off like just depositing their money into the stock market and like never looking back.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think it's really, really wise. Moritz, I think one of the things that's kind of funny actually is the stuff you say makes so much sense, but it's just in crypto is one of the only universes around where for whatever reason, people's money has just got siloed in this place. And then they think that that's the only place to do stuff. Whereas all of the things that you said, I'm sure would be pretty classic advice in many ways. So I think it's been really, really helpful. Really, really appreciate your time for joining us, Moritz. It's been great to have you with us. If people want to follow along, which you definitely should, as I said, Moritz is one of the best young traders that I've known since I've been in the space. His handle is @onchainmo. That's ONCHAINMO. Anything you'd like to share before we head off here, Moritz?
No, I think I said everything I wanted to say. But yeah, appreciate you guys for having me on. It was a pleasure. And yeah, see you again sometime soon, I hope.
Thanks very much, man. Appreciate you joining us. We're going to have to do it again. We'll have to figure out what the next silver trade is because that was an outstanding one. Look, guys, that was our show for today. Thanks so much for joining us. We do this every single day, Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern time, live on X Video, YouTube, and you can catch us on Apple and Spotify too. We'll be back same time, same place tomorrow. Have a wonderful day. Take care. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.